what we're seeing in energy prices, it's artificial, actually. So Joe Biden's done a very good job lowering gasoline prices. It's been partly to do with China growth being sluggish, but it's been a lot to do with Joe Biden releasing the government's holdings, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve of oil. All the data shows that American demand for oil is actually outstripping supply. And America has become one of the world's biggest oil producers. It's now a net exporter of oil as well. It's a complete regime change in the past 10 years. Then let's look at Europe. When it comes to Europe, a complete opposite. Germany's economic model has been completely challenged, importing cheap energy from Russia and elsewhere, creating nice Audis, Volkswagens, and Porsches for us. They're still going to make those Porsches and those Audis, but one thing we have started to see in Europe is factories are literally shutting down production. Right. So the price of energy in Europe is 6 to 7 times higher than America. So when it comes to paper, when it comes to plastics, ceramics, glass, metals, fertilizers, all these basic items, but they require burning gas and using electricity to create them, the competitiveness of German exports has been wiped out on those products. So Audi and Porsche, they're still going to make their cars, but they're going to import steel and aluminium from the likes of China and the US. So this means a structurally weaker euro as well. So from the currency side, I really like commodity currency exporters and selling the likes of euro.
I actually see a little bit of a positive side from Jordan's comment. Do we actually have any upside, or do we have any potential surprise positively?
Well, I think recession and recoveries happen every, 7 to 10 years in the US. So I don't think people should necessarily look at the fact that recession's possibly coming next year as or later, but at least in my view, next year as necessarily a bad thing. Because the positive is this is a mild recession. So a lot of people younger than me, and so I look to my left, if your recollection of recession is 2008 and 2000, those are actually more severe recessions. '08 was even branded global great financial crisis, GFC. I think this coming recession, so far, I really hope that it remains this way, looks more like the late 80s type of recession, which means it's fairly mild. And the defaults won't spike any higher. So for example, in the great financial crisis, high yield spreads went to 2,200. During the tech bust, because a lot of the tech companies were in the high yield market, went to 1,100. But if you date back to late 80s, I think high yield spreads went to 800 to 900. We're at 450, 500. So my only thing is, if this recession remains mild, I just don't think people should get overly optimistic and try to day trade the Fed pivot and all that. I'll tell you this, I said we're going to get into this recession quietly or carefully. I use Korean word, and we're going to come out of it gradually because there's nothing structurally broken, and Fed's not going to be in a super hurry to induce growth or fix something majorly broken unless real estate gives us a surprise in the United States. In this world, I think, like the Japanese said, when we had our recession, even corporate bond spreads tightened because just the demand for bonds and safety away from other risky assets, even high quality corporate bonds in Japan tightened during recession. I don't think US will do that. The private equity guys that need to borrow, they're paying 10%. How many opportunities can they find where they have to pay us 10% to borrow our money? That's probably where volume of economic activity will further slow. But I think there's already good opportunities to get anywhere from 5 to 10% income while you wait for chance to buy real estate again.
One key difference with the global financial crash, it's information. So during that period of time, it was you didn't trust anyone. The information was not there. So when you borrowed or lent with anybody, you weren't sure about their balance sheets. Now, that's still kind of the case for the balance sheet reporting, but in terms of the information for politicians to react, so back in 2007 and 8, you heard the word moral hazard all the time. So the governments didn't want to bail out the banks because it was risky lending and they deserved the pain. Then we had Lehman Brothers change everything. This time around, I've been really impressed by, even though we've got inflation at 8 to 10%, it depends on the country you're in, This usually is an environment where politicians shouldn't intervene. They shouldn't do fiscal stimulus. That will just boost inflation. But in the EU, we've seen quite the opposite. We've seen extreme intervention for energy prices. And the one that really surprised me on the leverage space was we had a lot of commodity houses in Europe facing margin calls just a few weeks ago because the volatility in energy made them get stopped out their positions and so forth. And the volatility was so much higher. The EU stepped in and provided loans to those commodity houses and those brokers to step in and help them make those margin calls. So that's a game changer. So the idea of some leveraged loan popping up and then causing a global financial crash, maybe the risk is lower just because politicians have more information than before.
And there's no bubble to pop in these banks, right? Banks are very healthy. It's something that's to structurally be bad for a long time for financial crisis to happen. My biggest question is Europe, frankly, as I look to the two of you. And it's not that you guys are doing anything like, how are you going to handle Putin in a cold winter? And I think that's what, sitting in the US, that I worry about, that Europe could drag us into recession sooner.
Well, the main thing has been about, will Germany have enough gas to get through the winter? And the answer is yes. And the reason why is because they'll use less. That's it. The supply has fallen significantly from Russia. So Russian natural gas supplies to the EU have collapsed 90%. They're still doing a very little bit. It's about 50 million cubic meters a day. And that goes to the southeast countries of Europe. But like we saw in California, we had heat waves 2 weeks ago, and California sent a text message to everyone saying, please turn down your air conditioners. And I think it'll be the same in Europe, where we'll probably get a text message in January saying, please turn off your boiler, turn down the heating. So it's not great for the household, but it's survivable. But for industry, it's real painful because, like I said, we get cushioned as consumers. The average bill in the UK has been massively subsidized. Same for Germany, same for France. But for industry, not at all. The subsidies are much less, and they're paying these much higher prices.
So will the Koreans keep buying? This is the number 2 selling Mercedes market in the world right now. Will they pay the same prices when Mercedes jack up prices and Lexus is cheaper?
At the moment, everybody's raising prices, but if Lexus does lower prices, then we could have the case.
Japan is going to onshore all their manufacturing. It's one of the cheapest manufacturing in 2023.